It is with great regret that I must create this video, but there has been a huge scandal in the Warhammer hobby, TM, and I am unfortunately at the center of it. The searchlight has turned on the searchlight operator. And as a result, I can no longer produce videos on this channel. What's the issue? Well, as Jax Thien says, I look like the Karen of 40k, and it's annoying as hell. Well, Jax Thien, I want to speak to your manager. See, some creators have fan clubs, but I'm lucky, I've got a hate club, and I frequently get a lot of feedback on the channel from viewers, ranging from opinions on the coverage it provides to tabletop games, the topics that I choose to cover, the thumbnails that I use, and of course, my face. And I can't respond to all of this feedback all of the time. But once a year or so, when I've neglected my job and discovered that I don't have a video made just quite in time for my next release, I like to wade into the muck and address some of the extremely vitriolic critique that I receive. And hey, what do you know? Recently, I got a lot of feedback. So let's check it out and see if we can maybe answer some queries. And hey, you never know, if I do a good enough job, perhaps I'll be allowed to keep my channel up after all. Red Dog 1880 says, I f***ing despise discourse. Like I actually hate that woman. Upvote 40. Okay, well, we're off to a good start. Deleted says, I remember watching one Discourse Mini video and just thinking how insufferable it was. If you hate GW, then stop buying and focus on the pile of shame we all know you have. Or, if you really crave more plastic crack, then get stuff 3D printed and support community artists who provide a cheaper alternative. It really is that simple. No one is forcing you to buy from GW when there are so many alternatives. Upvote 62. So this is a frequent piece of criticism that I get on this channel. And I think a key element here is the idea that individual consumption can be the solution to widespread systematic problems. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. As individual consumers, we cannot influence the decisions of major corporations like Games Workshop. For example, me purchasing the Leviathan box set or not for my own personal use literally does not matter to the fortunes of Games Workshop. As a result, I don't try to shame people for buying Warhammer or subscribing to services like Warhammer Plus. Individual consumption is not the issue or the solution to the problems that I point out in this channel. We should always try to be ethical consumers, but I protest this system the only way that I can. I loudly criticize it to the largest audience that I can. I infiltrate Warhammer TM discourse with conversations and comparisons to other companies, and I try to disrupt the market monopoly that Games Workshop holds. Ultimately though, there is no revolution in consumption, even if I were to go and support a number of 3D artists myself. But thanks for the suggestion. Kid Merc says, holy f***, I just tried a video and how did you ever? Her voice is awful. She's literally doing a Keemstar impression. I couldn't last 30 seconds listening to her dumbass. Upvote 34. So I don't know who Keemstar is, sorry. If we're just talking about YouTube influences specifically though, for this channel, the most impactful creators have been the late great Total Biscuit, James Stephanie Sterling, and the Does Not Compute series by Michael Swaim. Thanks for giving the content a go though, sorry to hear it's not for you. And here we have the Warhammer 40k subreddit moderator saying, drama sells, clickbait sells, rage bait sells. It's way easier for these creates to say, GW bad, and get thousands of views than it is to create a good high quality video. Using Discourse Minis as an example, if you go right the way back to the start of her channel, she used to produce videos about a Batman miniatures game. Her best video from that time period got less than 6,000 views. Scroll through a little further and you see that all of a sudden she pivots onto the GW hate train, and her views per video jump from maybe 1,000 or so on average to tens of thousands of views. Her final pre-GW hate video got around 1,700 views. Her first GW hate video got 37,000 views. Upvote 160. So the video that's referenced in this comment is in fact my first breakout video, and this was actually an incredibly neutral video where I went over and explained some drama that was happening in the Warhammer community at that time. I actually didn't take a position in that video on the drama, and it did pretty well. Views actually went down when I started inserting my own divisive opinions and critiques though. But hey, I just couldn't help myself. I decided pretty early on that I wanted my content to be meaningful and that I wouldn't moderate my opinion for broad appeal. It's really interesting to see my content characterized as GW bad though. I mean, obviously this is not the most sophisticated characterization, but I do think that it hits on how little people seem to want to engage with the actual substance of my content. Corporate culture is so ingrained in our society, it is so commonplace that it is taken for granted and considered common sense now. And so when critiques are leveled against things that we take for granted, like growth at any cost, or maximizing revenue at the expense of value, or even just inappropriate price rises beyond inflation, this is always characterized as company bad. It's very disheartening, especially considering that I spend days writing my videos, being really careful of my language, crafting jokes, and reflecting on the impact of my words. Kind of a bummer to see it reduced like that. That's it. I will concede my content definitely only has the viewers that it does because I cover Games Workshop. That's true. And that's because of Games Workshop's effective monopoly in the wargame space. And that's where the audience is. I wouldn't call my content a hate train though. This feels like a dismissive caricature in my opinion. I do concede that there is a lot of unhappiness and toxicity in the Warhammer hobby though, and there is an audience for content creators that just want to criticize Games Workshop without offering anything else. I do think that my content offers more value than that, considering the amount of research that I put into my videos. I think this is a reason that I have an especially vitriolic hateum amongst some sections of the Warhammer community, and it's because the content that I produce can't be dismissed out of hand as merely motivated by bigotry or ignorance, and yet still amongst the Warhammer subreddits, the discords, I'll still be characterized as the person whose every video is about how Games Workshop is dying. I have never once said that Games Workshop is dying, and yet people still act like that's the only video I make. I like to think my content is a little bit more sophisticated than that though. Like 2 years ago, I made a video entitled, "Is Games Workshop Dying?" And in that video, I said no. I said it's not dying. And it was in response to all the people that were saying Games Workshop is dying. And yet people act like every video I create is on the topic because it's a straw man that they can batter. People, please, I'm asking you, I'm begging you to engage with my content. But thanks for the comment anyway. RealAd8243 says, I commented on the melodrama making the video more difficult to watch in one of Discourse's vids, and she went off on me, so I stopped watching her and did the same with most others soon after. Upvote 22. RWJP responds, yeah, Discourse has a real nasty attitude whenever anyone dares to question her point of view. For someone who claims to be acting on behalf of consumers against the big bad corporations, she really doesn't like it when consumers disagree with her. Upvote 35. So this is a little bit of a weird one. As far as I can tell, this is just a lie. I don't know. I can't find any evidence of this. I don't remember any interaction with this person, RealAd8243. I actually searched my comment section to see if they showed up anywhere, but they haven't commented at all in any of my videos under that name. So yeah. I will say though that I'm generally quite nice in the comments of my videos. I tend to ignore the mean-spirited ones because I don't really have time for them, and I get a lot of mean-spirited ones. And again though, we have the Reddit moderator here. For a long time was the only Reddit moderator for the Warhammer subreddit, saying that I have a real nasty attitude. I'm not sure where this has come from. I try to be nice. This could be because I criticize the moderation policies of the Warhammer subreddit, but I'm sure that's probably unrelated. I will say though, there are a lot of lies that get told about me online that I do find very frustrating. People do like to make up stuff about me for some reason. I guess it's just a pitfall of the job. There was an especially offensive lie floating around that I bought a golden ticket to Warhammer Fest. I am not on golden ticket money. Jeez. Speaking of Warhammer Fest though, Jansalot says, I was at the CM info panel during Warhammer Fest like Discourse Miniatures, and she really tried to ask toxic questions, but everyone else was having a good time and simply not biting. So I was at Warhammer Fest and I did ask a lot of questions. Every opportunity that I got, I was up there, microphone in hand, asking a little old question. So for the record then, the questions that I did ask at Warhammer Fest were, the first one was, are your artists credited in the new Warhammer 40k rulebook? If not, why not? The answer that I got was, no, they're not, because we'd have to credit everyone who worked on the book. I thought that was a bit of a weird answer. It wasn't really reflective of the wider industry or the standards in the wider industry, but okay. The second question I asked was whether or not the old world rules would be free or whether or not they would be sold in army books or codices. The answer I got was that they'd be sold in codices. I found that disappointing. The third question that I asked was whether Games Workshop have ever thought to utilize alternative activation systems in Warhammer, such as using the bolt action activation system. The answer I got was no, but you can do what you like at home, which I thought was okay, fair enough. And then the final question I asked was whether or not the Inquisition models from the Ashes of Faith box would be released separately, or whether or not they'd be exclusive to the Ashes of Faith bundle box that's now no longer available. And I honestly can't even really remember the answer at this stage. I think it amounted to probably at some stage, which I thought was okay, pretty standard. I expected that. So are these reasonable questions or are they toxic? You be the judge. Also, not a lot of people were having a good time at Warhammer Fest. The queues were too long. Chosen of Chaos says, Discourse is the worst. I swear, every time I see one of her videos pop up, all I think to myself is the GW broke up with her and she is seriously angry about it. Also, if she gestures that much in real life, I have to wonder how many people she's inadvertently given a concussion to. So there's a little bit of an undercurrent to a lot, not all, but a lot of the criticism that I get. I see this constantly, this kind of, ooh, did Games Workshop break up with you? This argument suggests that there is an emotional vindictiveness to my arguments, undermining their legitimacy. And I never see this argument get leveled at male content creators. Funny that. Sarvo Tillam says, Discourse Minis, care to comment? Sure thing, Chief. Stargazer86 says, a lot of hate for Discourse in here. I actually don't mind her at all. She brings up fair points fairly often and seems pretty chill on her streams as opposed to her videos. GW does deserve criticism for some of the boneheaded stuff it does, but I also find that she gives them credit when they do something good too. Honestly, I dislike the hype videos just about as much as the doom posting stuff. Oh man, look at this awesome thing GW is putting out. I totally want it. GW is on top of its game. It's about as useful as everything GW does sucks. I like some of the smaller creators as well. Lizard of Doom is a new one that I found that I've been enjoying. Minus 14 downvotes. Well, I'm glad that somebody likes the content. I think this comment does speak to the wider world of influencers though, and the transition that content creation has taken online over the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of the reviews and coverage of Warhammer is tonally very positive. Games Workshop maintain a list of favorite content creators who are systematically encouraged to produce content that praises Games Workshop. And creators are not just encouraged by Games Workshop directly, but by their audience as well. Many of the content creators who may have signed NDAs with Games Workshop are balanced in my experience, and I enjoy a lot of their content and coverage. But there are a lot of creators who also have an audience of viewers who, on the whole, want to be affirmed in their purchasing decisions, and they want an excuse to buy a consumer product that they're already a fan of. So as creators, a lot of influencers are stuck in a place where they're very much encouraged to produce content that is positive. And I speak to many different content creators and they will tell you that if you criticize Games Workshop on your channel, you will get raked over the coals for it. I mean, we can see it in this Reddit thread, right? And this makes sense. A lot of people who seek out content for, Warhammer, or give me anything like Magic the Gathering or any interest, they are fans of that particular thing. Of course, they want to be affirmed in their decisions. People feel uncomfortable when they get reminded of the things that they don't want to think about. Griffin Bait says, so true. That's why you need to balance the negative videos with the feel-good videos. Actually, overbalance is what is required. I know my hobby has its problems, but I don't need to feel negative on a day-to-day basis. Sure, that's no problem. Now, that said, as a channel, I'm here to create content that's not just hobby content. There are plenty of channels for that. This is an opinion channel, and I have a certain perspective. I'm pro-consumer, I oppose monopolies, I argue for accessibility and for more competition. I find that intrinsically positive, even when I'm critiquing a company, and that's my editorial position on the channel. Yes, I have one of those, and it's not a surprise that most of my content is therefore critical of a company like Games Workshop, because our goals are intrinsically in opposition with one another. Games Workshop's goal is to make profit. They are by their nature anti-consumer, and they want to be a monopoly, and they are incentivized to crush competition. So no wonder I criticize so much of their decisions on this channel, right? I mean, Games Workshop don't balance their content in their marketing. They don't provide space to their competitors or suggest alternatives. I mean, quite the opposite. They frequently try to shut down other creators. I can only take Games Workshop as I find them. Perhaps the lack of feel-good videos on my channel is more of a reflection on Games Workshop rather than me. Biggie Tubbs says, I actually fucking despise Discourse Miniatures. She never says anything positive and overall is just a negative asshole. Even when she's of the correct opinion, she never adds anything to the conversation and just chooses to bitch and complain. For fuck's sake, just make decent Warhammer content and maybe people would like her. Upvote 3. So I do create hobby content occasionally as a bit of a break on the channel, even if it is not my focus. Of my last 4 videos, for example, the ones that are actually expressly brought up as drama content in this thread, only one of them was really what I would say is expressly negative. Last week, I painted Space Marines as a video. That was fun. 3 weeks ago, I covered a load of games that I really like the look of at UKGE. And then the video before that was 5 tips for getting into Warhammer for the first time. My only negative coverage recently was a video covering Warhammer 40k 10th edition. And the first half of that video was dedicated to talking about all the good stuff about the new edition that I was enjoying because I've been playing loads of games of it in order to kind of properly stress test the new system. So I'm in sort of a no-win situation. I don't think I'll ever be able to create content that is really saccharine enough for some parts of the community. I'll always be that negative asshole. And Games Workshop have grown so large now that they are basically perpetually having their cake and eating it too. As Games Workshop increase in size, they're continually doing the bad things, such as selling FOMO boxes, which people hate, or increasing their prices, which people hate, but they're always getting rewarded for it. And all of their decisions have become so incredibly normalized at this stage that most consumers can't even imagine it done any other way. And to be perfectly honest, I find this utterly stomach churning. A massive element of this is the monopolization of the wargame industry. There's no meaningful competition to Games Workshop, and yet all I can do is impotently yell about it from inside a lava lamp. And even that's seen as going too far, apparently. So there's really a limit to the decent Warhammer content that I can really make here. Not to mention, of course, that Games Workshop won't help me make decent Warhammer content. They maintain a blacklist of creators that, for one reason or another, they just don't like. And I am on this blacklist, so they don't send me out like review copies of products or anything. So I don't frequently cover their new boxes of miniatures or do painting videos of the latest Space Marine model or whatever. There's no point. By the time I would purchase this out of my own money, it would be too late. It's already been covered and no longer relevant, and there just won't be any views in it, and I do one video a week, right? But that said, I do say when I think the Games Workshop have done something good, like the free core rules for 10th edition, for example. And hey, Combat Patrol seems like a really fun game mode. I'm gonna be reviewing that on the channel soon. And the new Tyranid models look pretty cool. I streamed about that, so yeah, you know, I do some stuff. See, I'm not always negative. It's just, I think that there is an opinion of my content from the outside looking in based on like the titles and thumbnails and things like that. Look, my titles and thumbnails, they're gonna change. They're gonna look different as time goes on. I'm constantly switching them around. The only purpose of my titles and thumbnails is to get people to watch my content. I think my content has a lot of value. I spend a lot of time researching it. I spend a lot of time writing it. I spend a lot of effort on it. I spent a week creating my content, those videos. They look pretty simple, but you know, this lava lamp doesn't, you know, spool itself. But I do know that there is definitely a group of creators in Warhammer, in wargaming, who are very critical of Games Workshop. I do know that that's a case. And I think that a large element of that is because Warhammer isn't a hobby. This is actually like one of the main problems the Games Workshop have. They are constantly billing Warhammer as a hobby. They're trying to be a big tent. And what they have done is they have collected all these wargamers into this big tent, and they cannot possibly satisfy them all. And this creates a lot of toxicity in the community. Lots of people engage with Warhammer and expect it to satisfy them. But really, what they want is wargaming. They don't want Warhammer. Warhammer is a brand. It's owned and operated by a single publicly traded company company, and the Warhammer hobby that they maintain is a reflection of the decisions and practices and business decisions of Games Workshop. If the wargaming hobby was more diverse, if there were more games, there were more options available to people, if people could create content about a variety of different games without their viewer numbers tanking, if they were given the space to 3D print all they want, if they realized that there were more games, if they realized that there was more than one activation system than the you go, I go system, perhaps there would be quite a bit less toxicity in the Warhammer hobby. I certainly know that for my own content, if Games Workshop weren't a monopoly in wargaming, I would not be covering them half as much. But they are, so I do. I think the difference between myself and a lot of other Warhammer focused content creators though, is that I cover Games Workshop as just one of many brands in wargaming, not the totality of that. And there's a lot of people who consider themselves Warhammer hobbyists and not war gamers. And I think that that as a label should be an uncomfortable one. I think that people should be uncomfortable taking that on. I think anytime that you associate yourself only with a specific corporate brand that has been manufactured for you, I think that should be an uncomfortable label adopted. And really, to be honest, there was a lot more comments, a lot more comments, but that's essentially the main thrust of most of them. And I think I had some pretty robust responses, not bad at all. Perhaps this isn't the end of Discourse Minis after all. Perhaps that was just clickbait. And if you're curious about the type of unapologetic rage and hate and negativity performed on this channel, why not check out this video where I spent a lot of time researching court cases to figure out why it is that Games Workshop continue to have a policy of not crediting their artists. Took a lot of time to make that one. A lot of time and effort, reading a lot of court cases, but hey, you know, I'm just a negative Nelly. And if any of my arguments presented today resonated with you, why not support the channel on Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures for exclusive videos where I review a variety of different war games. There are secret live streams where I can give you hobby advice, which will be definitely bad, and access to patron Discord channels where we can hang out. And a huge thanks to all my patrons, especially Sonic Bread, Crypto Kev, Mistress Arby, Novani, and Travis Hunter. Thank you so much, guys. I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.